Hello friends, welcome to the CEC live lectures. Dear friends, today in this session we are going to talk on one of the important and interesting topics. The topic of discussion is comparative religion. In the first half we are going to discuss on the introductory portion of the comparative religion, as well as we are going to talk on Hinduism too. In the later half, we are going to discuss on Islam as well as on Christianity. And for the discussion on the topic, we have with us in our studios Dr. Archana Prasad. Dr. Archana Prasad is an Assistant Professor in Department of Sociology, Kamala Nehru College, University of Delhi. Dr. Prasad is a prolific professor and she believes that the student community as a whole to be benefited always through her knowledge and wisdom. Let's take advantages from her experiences, friends, and if you really want to take advantages from her experiences, then you can ask questions. We know that you always have curiosity and you always have questions in mind which you think to be answered regularly. So you have privilege here to get answers to your questions. For that, you need to talk to us through our toll-free number. Our number is 1800110430. I repeat, our number is 1800110430. You are requested to call in the last 10 minutes of the lecture, as well as you are kindly requested to ask questions relevant to the topic only. Now, I would like to welcome our guest, Dr. Archana Prasad, once again. Hello, ma'am. Welcome to the session.
Thank you, Gitika, and welcome back to this lecture in the series of sociology. Today I am going to talk about comparative religion. And before I actually begin my lecture, we know that religion is very a complex topic, or something which is really a part of everyone's individual's life. So before we go through the lecture, it's very important to keep in mind that I'm only dealing with certain features about religion, history of the religion, and at no point is any perspective or any ideas of any individual is being reflected here. So the only attempt is to try to understand religion, because religion is not only about idea of relating to God, but it is more important to try to understand that all religion, all kinds, Hindu, Islam, Christianity, Judaism, name any, are only trying to preach a certain way of organizing our life, as more trying to talk about how to make society a more peaceful place to live in. And therefore it is very important to try to understand that no religion is superior or inferior, or there is no idea of trying to superimpose one religion over the other. And to begin my lecture, I try to cover, when we try to understand comparative religion, basically we try to see that comparative here could apply in two senses. One is to have a comparison of different religions that we are aware of, and the other context in which comparative could be used is to have a method of studying religion, and that is the comparative method. Now, when we use a comparative method in social sciences, our attempt is to try to understand the similarities and differences between two aspects. Here we know, or when we try to understand religion, because religion can cover from the most ancient types like animism, naturism, to more common, more complex type like Baha'i faith, and therefore it is very important to try to understand how we are trying to look across one over the other and arrive at certain similarities and differences. And therefore, to begin with, I will try to explain what is religion. If we break religion, we see it has religion. That means the means rebinding, and it binding together the society. And the whole idea is to reconnect. When we try to reconnect, that is try to establish a relationship, and a relationship is being established at three levels. One, with a higher power, a supreme power, which in many religions is termed as God. The second could be a way of relating to the community, so that the society is not consist of individual society but of a large number of members, and the interrelations between the members of the society would lead to a kind of a way of life which is more organized. And at the third level, it's very important that religion helps us to bind with ourselves, because it's more in questions of our ideas, our ethics, our morality, through which we live our life. And keeping that in context in mind, that in terms of reconnection, we know that the most basic way of understanding religion is that it is a set of beliefs and doctrines. Most of the time, these beliefs and doctrine are expressed through myths. There are large amount of mythical stories, narratives, scriptures, which outlines the origin of a religion, the philosophy of the religion, the basic tenets of the religion, the philosophy behind it, and that is from where an individual or a set of community believing a set of common ideas arrive at a certain set of ideas and beliefs, and those sets of ideas and beliefs starts affecting the day-to-day life of individual. And in that context, social sciences try to understand religion as a human phenomena, and we always try to have a comparative perspective, because it will help us to compare not only set of beliefs of two different communities, but also the beliefs of individuals who are staying across geographical and other environmental areas. When we try to understand, we see in the general understanding we have 5 to 6 world religions, which includes Christianity, Islam, Jainism, Buddhism, Sikhism, and Hinduism. This list can be further extended to include Zoroastrianism, to include Taoism, and therefore it is a non-ending list. But what is very important is that large number of scholars have tried to differentiate between one kind of religion from the other on the basis of the belief in God. So, there is a monotheistic religion. It implies that the particular religion emphasizes in the belief in a single God. For instance, in Islam, we have Allah. Allah is the only God with whom human beings are supposed to have an interrelation, and it is the direction of Allah that the society of Muslim community is organized. The second type of religion is polytheistic. A polytheistic religion is a religion in which there is belief in multiple gods or god figures, and in that extent Hinduism is the best example, where in Hinduism, and when I go through the details of Hinduism, we'll see that there are no single prophets or there is no single god through which the religion is connected, and there are n number of believers, for believers who believe in Vishnu, with the whole community that are called Shaivites, that is, they have belief in the religion of in the deity of Shiv. So there are multiple forms of God. The third form, it could be an atheist religion, where there is no understanding of God, yet we have a certain way of which society is organized, and that is in terms of certain scriptures laid out by a certain holy person. For instance, Buddhism, which puts across the eightfold path but does not consider Lord Buddha as a God. Then there are large other ways in which categorization and classification of religion has been done, and one of the methods of classifying religion is to classify into Semitic and non-Semitic. Now, Semitic religion would be in terms of religion which are related to the Semite, and that could be religion of Arab, Assyrians and other societies, especially of minority community living in parts of Middle East, Israel, Lebanon, etc. Then the other part of non-Semitic religion could be Aryan and non-Aryan. When we look into Aryan religion, there are two types, that is Vedic religion and non-Vedic religion. When we look into the understanding of these classification, we see Semitic religions are religions that originated among the Semites. According to the Bible, which talks about the origin of life on earth in terms of the whole idea of Prophet Noah, who had a son called Sem, and the descendant of Sems were known as Semites. These Semite religions are religions that have a prophet, or there is the whole idea of prophecy. Major Semitic religion include Judaism, Christianity and Islam. All these religions are prophetic religions that believe in divine guidance sent through prophets of God. In Islam, we know that Prophet Muhammad was a messenger who had been sent to give the guideline or the way in which individuals are supposed to organize their life. The second category of religion was non-Semitic religion, which was divided into the Aryan religion and non-Aryan religion. The Aryan religion was religion which was common among the Aryan group, which is the Asian people who were living in the Indo-European area, and there is the whole idea of from where the religion Hinduism emerged. The Vedic religion, which is the Hindu religion, is a earlier form of Hinduism. The non-Vedic religion are religion which have diverse origin from the Vedic religion, and that is Sikhism, Buddhism, Jainism, etc. The non-Aryan religion are religion that have diverse origin, which is Confucianism, Taoism or of China. So, these when we try to understand classification, we need to keep in mind that these are not watertight classification, that we need not necessarily use this classification in terms of categorizing into fixed boxes, but this is just a general way of trying to understand how religion could be in a way classified in order to understand the differences between one and the other. When we come into the whole concept of comparative, this whole idea of comparative religion emerged as a branch in the understanding of religion, which signifies that we are trying to make an attempt to understand the traditions and forms of religious life of one religion as different or as unique from the other religion. A.S. Bouquet says the comparative religion aims at survey and compare great world religion, and as a result, the entire specific branch of comparative religion emerged, which were trying to compare the whole idea of religion. And the areas in which the comparisons can be done are: number one, origin and history. In order to understand any religion, we need to go back to the origin, how it originated, what is the history behind the emergence, and when we look into the history, we are also talking about transformations or changes that the religion has undergone. In all religions, all world religions, we see there have been a large amount of contestation over leadership, over certain ideology, and these contestations have actually resulted in kind of reformation within each religion, and therefore historical understanding becomes very significant in order to understand different forms world religion. The second idea on which the comparison is done is very basic, is in terms of the beliefs in God. In terms of what is the principal idea, is the religion that believes in the existence of one God, does it believes in the existence of multiple God, or it does not believe in the existence of any God. Then we also have in terms of text. Now, when we look into text, which are scriptures or sacred literature, now there can be different kinds of sacred literature or scriptures, and some of them the scriptures are actually verdict of the prophets, or are actually messengers, or they've been written down by what has been conveyed to them through angels or through the certain link between God and human beings. Whereas there are certain texts which have been written on the lives of the leaders, in terms of the lives of the prophets, and therefore there can be distinction between scriptures and there has been contestation and conflict even in terms of the content of these scriptures, because these scriptures have been subject to multiple interpretation. So it has most of the time it is not necessarily that religious scriptures are read in the original context, and that needs to be kept in mind in terms of understanding the main ideas or main beliefs of each religion. And then the fourth idea on which comparison can be done is in terms of what are the basic beliefs. When we try to talk about religions, evolution of religion, conflicts taking place within the religion, transformations taking place, these conflicts and contestations over a period of time has led into emergence of different denomination, different branches and sects. Now, what is very important to understand is that these sects and branches actually do not move away from the main religious source, but there is a difference in terms of the main idea or the main tenet which is sent across. Now, when we try to the focus of comparative literature is to basically, in today's lecture, I will be talking about three world religion, that is Hinduism, Islam and Christianity. So, when we talk about Hinduism, we know that Hinduism is the world's oldest religious practiced by the Dravidians who inhabited the Indus Valley civilization. So, it is considered to be one of the ancient religion which was, and to a large extent among the Hindus there is a belief that they could, is a religion which was existing prior to many other religions. And the Dravidians were therefore subjugated by the Aryans who practiced Brahmanism or Vedaism. Now, there is a lot of difference between Hinduism and Brahmanism, in terms of Brahmanism being basically the religion or the belief practices of the upper caste, which is the Brahmin society, whereas Hinduism could be in the fourfold Varna. Now, this comes to a very important point. When we try to understand Hinduism, we need to keep in mind that Hinduism is not only about talking about believe in God and believe in the superpower, but Hinduism is a way of actually organizing social life, and therefore it is very strongly related to the social system. And the Hindu social order or the Hindu social structure is actually determined by the Hindu principles of Hinduism, and that is the idea of Varna system. Now, the whole idea is that the Hindu society is divided into 4 Varnas, and in the Vedas, which were the earlier religious scripts of the Hindus, mentions 4 Varnas. Later, there was an addition to the 5th Varna. Now, the Varna is a social division of society into 4-fold division based on the birth of the individual from the different parts of the Brahma, who is considered as the supreme deity in Hinduism. Now, we know that it is the Varna system through which the caste system, which is a part of Hindu society, emerged, and therefore it was a whole idea of Varna's theory actually being a religious social system. And in that context, Hinduism is known as Sanatan Dharma, that is religion coming down to the people through eternity. So, it does not have any prophet, it does not have any individual single leader who could have been responsible for the establishment of religion. It is through the ways in which the Aryans and the Dravidians practice their everyday life in terms of belief in teetotalism, in terms of worshipping Vishnu, in terms of practicing the Varnashram system, that the religion was practiced. And therefore, it was important to understand that every Hindu, it is the responsibility to consider the Varna Dharma as a part of their life. And then when we look into the features of Hindu society, we see that karma and dharma is the basic principle that governs Hindu life, which will lead to the whole idea of salvation, that's moksha, that is coming out of the cycle of life and death. Then we also try to understand in the belief of Hinduism in the theory authority of Vedas, and Vedas are actually scriptures which mark the beginning of Hindu society. When we look into the origin of Hinduism, we see that there is no specific date, as we would see in large number of other religions. There is a specific period in which the religion originated, but here there is a lot of controversy in terms of the actual period in which Hinduism as a religion emerged. Most of the scholars would argue into the period of 1500 to 1700 BC, when it was actually considered to be practiced in the earlier Asian society. The word Hindu was derived from the river Indus, and it is the same word from where we derive the word India, which was also known as Hindustan. When we try to understand the whole idea of Hinduism as a religion practice, we also try to understand the political dimension, where there has been conflict and invasion by other outsiders, and mostly by the Muslim invaders. And this is a part of history of India, that whenever the Muslim have ruled over India over a period of very long time, and during this time there was a lot of integration, or there was a lot of intermingling of different beliefs and practices, and there was certain kind of emergence of Indo-Islamic tradition, where we have the influence of the Islamic way of life on the Hindu individuals. When we look into the growth, it has been classified into the 3 or 4 category. In the initial is the classical Hinduism, which is the original form in which Hinduism was practiced. Then we have the Puranic Hinduism, which is the time when the Vedas became very significant in determining and deciding, organizing this life of people. Then we have Hinduism in the period of Islamic rule, and then we have modern Hinduism. So, going back to the first is the classical Hinduism, which was flourished during the Gupta Empire, which is also known as the Golden Age. And here was the time when Shiva and Vishnus were most venerated deities, that is, large number of people would worship Shiva and Vishnu. And therefore, it was followers of Hinduism was spread across Indian subcontinent. After the Gupta period, we have the emergence of the feminine cult or the Mahadevi or Shakti in Hinduism. And there was a large number of texts which was written during this period, which are referred as the Puranas or the ancient writing. Now, these writing or the Puranas refer to the Bhakti tradition which emerged during this period. And there was emergence of large number of other texts which was known as Tantras. So, we have Puranas and the Tantras, which were texts trying to reflect on the religious and social life of the people living in the area. The Tantras reflected rejection of orthodox Brahmanism and is characterized by secrecy and oral tradition. So, here we see a kind of an emergence or diversion from the mainstream Hinduism, where they started objecting to certain ideals and beliefs practices of the orthodox Brahmins. Then we have the period of Islamic rule, and as I have already said that during the long stretch of the dominance of Muslim rules is in the Indian subcontinent, we had the whole syncretic religious emerging, and there was certain amount of confluence of Hinduism and Islamic tradition that was practiced in many parts of the country. When we look into the modern Hinduism, which is actually associated by scholars and historians with the emergence of the Britishers in 1600 century, and this was actually now we see in the during the Mughal period, we have the Islamic rule dominating, or there is a syncretic between Hinduism and Islam, and with the coming of the Britishers, which were also brought in Christian missionaries, there was the influence of Christian tradition and ideas, and to a large extent, when we read about the Oriental discourse of Indian history, we read that the Britishers and the Christian missionaries were very critical of the certain practices and certain ideas which were being portrayed by Hinduism, and therefore there was a whole emergence of the reform movement, social reform movements within Hinduism, which were trying to do away with large number of social practices like sati, child marriages, and dowry, etc. We also try to understand that at one level there was a critique of Hinduism as having certain practices which were disintegrating the society. At the same time, we see leaders like Mahatma Gandhi who were trying to force people to go back to the Vedas and go back to the values of Hinduism, whereby he was trying to bring out the essential sense of Hinduism, which was non-violence in it, and his entire freedom movement was based on ahimsa and religious tolerance, which are part of the Vedic text. When we look into God and deities, as I already said in the beginning of the lecture, that Hinduism is a polytheistic religion. That means it believes in multiple gods. When we talk a lot about multiple gods, we know that the Trinity, Hindu Trinity or the Trimurti, which is the Brahma, Vishnu and Shiva, is considered as central to whole understanding of Hinduism, and that the three ideals, other gods and deities, are either related as terms of conjugal pair or are considered as successors and descendant of the three. So, the Brahma is considered as the creator, Vishnu is considered as the preservator, and Shiva the destroyer. So, the balance between creation, preservation and destruction is actually what maintains the social system. Now, when I try to talk about the female deities, we see conjugal relation is again very significant, and sexual relation has been considered as important for life and society, and therefore we see these pairs are always worshipped in Brahma, Saraswati. Saraswati is the god of learning, Vishnu and Lakshmi. Lakshmi is the god of wealth, Shiv and Parvati. Parvati signifying mountain. And there were other female deities as well as significant to Hindu text, and that is Durga, which is an embodiment of feminine Shakti, and we also has Kali. So, we also have the terms of both the side of feminine deities being a part of Hindu text and scriptures, and that is one who are docile and the other who are in terms of bold and destructive. Then we look into the whole idea of sacred text. When we look into the sacred text, religious text in Hinduism can be categorized into two, Shruti and Smriti. Shrutis are accounts written by the priest and holy men as heard from God, and Smriti are those that have been received or handed down by the tradition. Smritis are in the form of stories and hence in knowledge of all, whereas Shrutis are in the minds of priest and pandit. When we look into the text, we know Vedas are the most important text of Hindu religion. Veda is a Sanskrit word which means knowledge. Veda, and we know it's a very kind of a common sensical understanding where there are four kinds of Veda: the Rig Veda, the Sama Veda, Yajur Veda and the Athar Veda. Each of them has setting out certain principles in order to organize social life. Now, if we look into the classification of text, because there is a large number of texts in Hindu literatures, we see that the Shrutis are the Brahmana, Shastra, Law of Manu and Upanishads. Brahmanas are instructions for priests, the Sutras are instructions for all people, Law of Manu are specific instructions for all Hindus, Upanishads are philosophical meditations and mystical interpretation of the Vedas. When we look into the Smriti, we know there are 5 types of them. They are Mahabharata, the Bhagavad Gita, the Ramayana, the Purana and the Tantras. The Mahabharata is the epic describing the war between two sets of cousins. The Bhagavad Gita is the ideal text which is prescribed for organizing one's life. Therefore, the other epic is the Ramayanas, and we have mythological stories in the form of Puranas and Tantras, which is also part of the Hindu scriptures. When we look into the basic belief, we see that the whole idea of Hindu belief is in immortality of the soul, the transmigration of soul. Immortality of the soul is that soul never comes to an end. It is the body which on death that is destroyed. The soul separates from the body and transmigrates to another body, and that is the whole idea of belief in life after death in Hinduism. When we have the 4 goals or aim, which is Dharma, Kama, Artha and Moksha. Dharma is the good deed, Kama is the knowledge of love, sexual, sensual pleasure, Artha is the pursuit of wealth, Moksha is the liberation from the circle of life and death. Moksha and salvation is very significant in Hindu religion, and there are different paths to achieve moksha: through knowledge, through unattached actions, the karma and samsara. So, when we try to actually look into Hindu religion, rather we can have a whole series lecture on specifically to understand it, but I am not going to go into the details of each of them, but because the whole idea or the objective of the lecture is to understand the basic understand what is Hinduism in a very nutshell, and therefore this is what we are trying to do in the first half of the lecture. Thank you.
With this note, thank you, ma'am. Thank you so very much for giving us this session on comparative religion. Dear friends, there is a lot more for you. You are requested to be with us. We are back after a short break. Thank you. Hello friends, welcome back to this session. Friends, as you know that today we are talking on comparative religion. In the previous session, we tried to give you deep insight into what comparative religion is, as well as we wish to give you a thought on Hinduism too. It was all textual as well as the basic too, and taking the lecture forward, now we are going to talk on Islam and Christianity. And for the discussion on the topic, we have with us in our studios Dr. Archana Prasad. Dr. Archana Prasad is Assistant Professor in Department of Sociology, Kamala Nehru College, University of Delhi. Friends, our expert is a prolific one, and she believes that the students' answers or students' questions to be answered regularly. So, if you have any question, you have a privilege to ask questions from her on today's topic. You need to talk to us through our toll-free number. Our number is 1800110430. I repeat, our number is 1800110430. So, while listening to the lecture, if you feel so, your question is to be answered, feel free to talk to us. Now, I would like to welcome our guest, Dr. Archana Prasad, once again. Hello, ma'am. Welcome to the session.
Hello, Kritika. Thank you. Welcome back to the second session on comparative religion, and continuing with the talk with the whole idea of comparison between world religion. Now I am going to talk on Islam. The religion of Islam, the term Islam comes from an Arabic word which means peace and submission. The whole idea of Islam is submission to God, and submission is to the Almighty, and in Islam the Almighty is only one God, which is Allah, and therefore it is the whole way, if we try to look into the ethical aspect of Islam, is to follow the guidelines is as sent across by God or as established by God, and in that context we see that it is also organizing social life. It is a way of life. So when we go into the origin of Islam, we see it originated in 1610 AD with a man named Muhammad, who is the prophet. Now when we read historical book, there is a lot of debates in terms of the dates, and so the dates could be varying in different textual text and historical books. When we look into the Prophet Muhammad's life, we see that he was born in the city of Mecca. He became troubled by the greediness of some people and went into the hills to meditate. And he was trying to actually arrive at certain ways in which he could actually help those who were suffering, those who were the needies. And that is how he received his first revelation. That is, angel Gabriel appeared to him and said that he is the messenger of God on earth to actually improve or actually to heal the sufferings of the individual. And for the next 20 or around 20 years of his life, he devoted his life in actually preaching what he had learnt in the revelation, and it is the revelation which forms the basis of the religion of Islam. Muhammad returned to Mecca and began preaching love and faith in God. Then we try to see in terms of the sects or branches in Islam, we are quite familiar that in Islam there are two branches. One is the Sunni sect, and the second is the Shiite. Sunni comes from the term Sunnah, which means customs or tradition, and the distinction between the Sunni and Shiite is basically on the question of leadership after the death of Prophet Muhammad. And there was one group which was that believed that it was the inheritance of one particular individual who would actually take on the leadership, whereas the other group were in favor trying to consider Ali as Muhammad Ali as the successor, who was a cousin as well as son-in-law of Prophet Muhammad. When we look into Sunni, it is recognizes the first four elected caliph or the spiritual leaders after Muhammad's death as successors, whereas the Shiite means Ali means those who follow Ali's path. They differ over the succession of Caliph to Muhammad as leader of Islamic community. The Sunnis believe that the honor belongs to elected member of the tribe of Muhammad, whereas the Shiite believe that the position is hereditary and therefore it should first go to Muhammad Ali, and this actually became the ground of division between the Islamic community into the Sunni and the Shiite. In all the other Sunnis and Shiite, in terms of the belief in Quran or in terms of the belief in other ideals or in terms of the other aspects of religion, there is no difference. When we look into other groups or subsects within Islam, we see there is Ahmadiyyas, who were founded by Mirza Ghulam Ahmad, whose followers believed to him to be the promise of Messiah. Prophecy did not end, and the whole idea was that the Ahmadiyyas believed that Prophet Muhammad was not the last prophet, and prophecy did not end with him, and therefore it could the Mirza Ghulam could succeed Prophet Muhammad. And the second idea in which Ahmadiyyas differentiate from the other Islamic community is that Islam is subject to multiple interpretation, and therefore they are not one way of trying to understand Quran. The other subsect is Sufi, and Sufi is a mystic branch of Islam which talks about reformation within the Islam in terms of being more open and in terms of not being very orthodox in nature. It emphasizes including prayer and fasting. It little about Sufism says that external actions do not matter, it is the internal action that counts. The next group is the Wahhabi. Wahhabi is a strict conservative sect that tries to follow the original teaching of Muhammad. It was derived from Sunni Hanbalism. They emphasized Tawhid or the oneness of God. Then we will try to understand that even within the modern Shia Islam, there is further division. There is the Twelfers, the Ismailis and the Jaidis. The Twelfers refer to their adherent belief in 12 divinely ordained leaders known as the 12 Imam. The Imams are the religious leaders in Islamic community. They accept Musa al-Qadin, younger brother of Ismail, as the true Imam. So there is again contestation, or there is a difference in understanding of who is supposed to lead whom. The second community within the Shia Islam is the Ismailis. The Ismailis get their name from the acceptance of Imam Ismail Zafar as the appointed spiritual successor. Then we have Jaidis, emerged in the 8th century of Shia Islam. They are named after Jaidi Ali, the grandson of Hussein. So these are all in terms, we also try to understand that religion in itself not only helps us to understand, believe in certain texts, believe in certain ideas, but it also helps us to understand the political life, where there is a where there is a whole idea of inheritance and leadership, question of leadership. Then we look into the scriptures. The main two scriptures in Islam are the Quran and the Hadith. The Quran, which means recitation, the term Quran means recitation. It is a book compiled of messages that Prophet Muhammad, based on the revelation that Muhammad Prophet received from Angel Gabriel. Each chapter or portion of the Quran is called surah. They are 114 surah and 6236 ayat or verses. Each of these chapters is talking about a different aspect of human life, the way in which individuals should live, and it talks about the way in which God is the superior, omnipotent. It talks about relation with individual, it talks about relations with parents, and other details. Basically, the Quran is a guideline. It's a book which gives us a guideline, or rather a legal layout in terms of how individuals should live their religious life, their spiritual life, the individual life as well as the collective life. And here it is important to mention the aspect that it is not very different from what would be mentioned in the Bhagavad Gita. Both Bhagavad Gita and Quran are basically teaching individuals the right path to way in which they should live their life. The second scripture in Islam is the Hadith. The Hadith is the historical account of life of Muhammad. So while the Quran is the recitation or the revelation that Muhammad had heard, the Hadith is the account of the way in which Muhammad had spent his life, written by different people in Muhammad's circle. The writing are based solely from the words and action of Prophet Muhammad, which are used as a significant tool to further understand the Quran. So many a time whole idea is that the Quran gives us certain guideline, and the way in which the guidelines are actually going to be interpreted or is going to help us understand everyday life, the Hadith comes in action. But however, the Quran is considered to be more superior or different from the other scriptures, which other scriptures are in forms of text which has been written by different scholars, different leaders in the Islamic community. But the Quran is of supreme importance, and the reason why the Quran is of significance in Islam is, number one, Quran is miraculous and imitable. Nothing similar can be produced by human beings. So this is one time revelation by the angel in terms of the exact words that was being revealed by Allah, and therefore a second kind of an action has never been done, and therefore it cannot be imitated. After the Quran, no more scriptures were revealed by God to individuals. Just as Prophet Muhammad, it is the last prophet, the Quran is the last scriptures, and this is the basic belief in a large number of Islamic community. God has taken it upon himself to protect the Quran from alteration, to safeguard it from corruption, and to preserve it from distortion. On the other hand, previous scriptures suffered alteration and distortion and do not remain in their original revealed form, and this in itself talks about the sacredness of the book. When we look into the key belief, Islam is a monotheistic religion. Monotheistic religion means that there is a belief in one God. Allah is the Arabic word for God, and he is the only God who created the universe. Muhammad is not supposed to be considered as a God. He is only a messenger of God on earth. Salvation comes from submitting to the will of Allah. A true Muslim is a one who follows the Islam in terms of one who would submit to the calling of Allah. The four major concepts at the center of Islam are God, the community, which is the Ummah, the divine revelation, which is the Quran, the law, which is the Sharia, which talks about the everyday marriage, divorce, every aspect of way of living life. And then we talk what is very central to Islam is the 5 pillars of Islam. These 5 pillars of Islam are considered as dictum which help us to organize everyday life, or rather discipline the life of Islamic community. The first pillar is Shahada. Shahada means declaration of Islamic creed. The creed is a declaration in the form, I testify that there is no God except Allah and Muhammad is the apostle of Allah. So this is the singular belief among all Islam, that there is only one God, and that is Allah, and Prophet Muhammad is the messenger of God. And Islam demands, submission implies that you have complete faith in this declaration. The second pillar is Salat, the prayer, and the prayer implies that they are Muslim or the Islamic community are supposed to perform prayers 5 times in the day, at dawn, before sunrise, soon after midday, in the afternoon, soon after sunset, and before retiring to bed. Now these again helps us to organize everyday time in terms of giving thanksgiving, and also try of certain kind of confession of mistakes that one has done in the daytime. Zakat is almsgiving, charity, and is also central to Hinduism, which is referred as Dan. Dan is very central to understanding of Hindu ideal, and this again becomes significant in Islam. The original meaning of zakat is purification and growth. That is, you can achieve purification and growth in individual life by helping or by giving helping others who are not doing well, or those who are poor, those who are wretched, and this becomes in a way of trying to bringing about a certain kind of balance in society. The fourth pillar of Islam is on, that is fast during the month of Ramjan. The three types of fasting, that is Siyam, are recognized by the Quran: ritual fasting, fasting as compensation for repentance, and ascetic fasting. So these ideas of Ramzan is to actually again create or purify your body in order to be able to submit to the Almighty, which is the Allah. The fifth pillar of Islam is Hajj, or pilgrimage to Mecca. And this occurs in the Islamic month, which is the 12th month in the holy calendar of Islam, and it is believed that every Muslim should visit, abled body in should visit the Mecca once in their lifetime and do their offerings to the God. When we come to the religion, which is again more or less says a lot of historical account with Islam, and that is Christianity. Christianity began in 1st century AD in Palestine. Now it is known as Israel. A Jew named Jesus began preaching in what today is Israel, the west bank of Jordan. He taught God loved all people and even those that have sinned. So again, the whole idea of equality, egalitarianism is central to the three religions that I have talked about. Some Jews greeted him as Messiah, that is messenger or savior, and again we see that in whole idea of incarnation is central to all religion, in the sense that whenever there is too much of evil on the earth, God would send a messiah or prophet or incarnation of God in order to do away with the evil and bring about peace and love. His main preaching was God is loved and loves everyone, especially those rejected by the society. So again coming back to a kind of a comparison, we see that the whole central idea of the all preaching of different world religion is to ensure that there is a kind of an egalitarianism in society. Jesus was convicted of treason under Roman law and crucified or executed. His disciples proclaimed that Jesus has risen from the dead. They began preaching that Jesus was the Son of God, and they called him Christ. The Christ meaning is Messiah. They spread Jesus' teaching throughout the Roman world and beyond. The holy book of Christian is the Bible, which is story is about the life of Jesus, and there are two kinds of testament, which I will go to when we look into the Christian scriptures. AD 300, Christians were persecuted until Roman Empire. Constantine became and proclaimed it as a lawful religion. Christianity later divided into the Roman Catholic, Pope in Italy, Eastern Orthodox and Protestant. So these are the different sects within Christianity. That is the Roman Catholic, which is based in the Western belief of the ideas preached by the Western Church, and we talk about basically two centers in the first millennium, that is Rome with the Western Church and Constantinople, now Istanbul, with Eastern Church. 11th century split between two, and two domination emerged. Western Church, which came, those who were part of the Western Church came to be known as Catholic, meaning universal. Christians under the leadership of Bishop of Rome or the Pope of Rome, and the roots of this Catholic rise in the Roman Empire, and the language is Latin. Then the second denomination is the Eastern Church, which is the Orthodox, meaning correct belief, roots in the Byzantine, and language is Greek. In the 7th century, protest against the teaching of Catholic Church led to the emergence of Protestant Christianity. So there was a whole Reformation movement in the 7th century over the way in Western Church were actually articulating the ideas of God and ideas of Jesus, and the movement that emerged from this was known as the Protestantism, and the Christian, those who followed them was known as Protestant Christian. The term Protestant applied to all non-Catholic Christians. According to Martin Luther, who was one of the proponents of Protestant religion, it was faith in God's love that brought salvation and not obedience to the rules of the church. So the significance or the authority of church as the guiding structure was rejected by the Protestant. Then we come to the sacred text. We have two collections. One is the Old Testament, which is the first part of the Christian Bible, which is primarily upon the Hebrew Bible. It is collection of ancient religious writing by the Israelites. And the second part of the Bible is known as the New Testament. The New Testament is about the life and teaching of Jesus Christ. It consists of the four Gospels written by Matthew, Mark, Luke and John, the Act of Apostles, 21 letters of epistle written to Paul, and the book of Revelation. See, all these different texts have been written by different apostles at different period of time, but more or less they are all talking about the preaching of Jesus Christ and the whole idea of how to submit oneself to the God. The Greek and the Latin churches have added 14 books between Old and New Testament, and they are known as Apocrypha. So, when we talk about the key belief in Christianity, we know the way we have the Hindu Trimurti or the Trinity, we also have a kind of a Trinity in Christianity, which is slightly different, where here we see that there is one God who has three manifestations or exist in three persons, the Father, the Son and the Holy Spirit. If one is a Christian, would see that you begin with the whole idea of talking about in the name of the Father, Son and the Holy Spirit. Father is the God, which is the ultimate supreme power. The Son is Jesus Christ, which is the Son of God or the Messiah, and the Holy Spirit is that after the death of Jesus, he came back to life, and that is that the Spirit, which is that guiding principle, that even after death of Jesus Christ, his Spirit was there to guide and direct, encourage Christians to live according to his principles and guideline. And therefore, another second similarity is to understand the whole idea of life after death being significant in Hinduism and in Christianity. Justification by faith, the holiness of church and the communion of saints. Then we also very central to the Christianity is the idea of 10 commandments, which is also known as Decalogue, a set of biblical principles relating to ethical worship, which plays a fundamental role in Christianity. It talks about loyalty, worship, reverence, sanctification and relationship, respect for parental authority, respect for human life, purity in relationship, honesty, truthfulness, contentment. These commandments shows us how to live a better life and now please God forever. What I am always doing, coming across in terms of doing a comparison, when we look into these 10 commandments, or we look into the whole idea of the 5 pillars in Islam, or we look into the whole idea of karma, dharma, moksha in Hinduism, we see that there is most of the themes are running across all three religions in terms of loyalty, in terms of faith in the Almighty, in terms of respecting relation, in terms of having a purity in relation, honesty and truthfulness. Then we come to the key rituals. We have the 7 sacraments, which are very important in every Christian's life. That is baptism, the ritual of initiation in the Christian community. That is a slight difference from Hinduism. In Hinduism, you have the sacred thread ceremony, which actually induces you to the caste system based on the Varna system. Similarly, in Christianity, we go through the ritual in which the water is sprinkled or immersed. There is different, certain branch believe that the water should be sprinkled, whereas certain believe that the individual should be immersed in the water as a sign of purification and an inclusion into the community of the Christians. Eucharist means thanksgiving, and is the source of submit to of the Christian's life. So you again trying to thank God, the Almighty, for giving a life. And it is also known by a different name as the Last Supper, or the last time that Jesus had dinner with his wine and bread. It is also known as sacrifice of Mass. Then we have confirmation, is the sacrament of Holy Spirit. The rite of confirmation is anointing the forehead with chrism together with laying of the minister's hand. So these are all different ways of actually thanksgiving Lord for having been given a life. And the fifth is penance, when we have holy orders and matrimony. When we look into the key festivals, we have Epiphany, which is the January 16, which, the date originally marked as the birth of Jesus in Eastern Church, whereas December 25 was chosen by the Western Church to celebrate Christmas as the birthday of Jesus. Then we have Lent, which is a 40-day period of fasting or self-denial and penance beginning on Ash Wednesday. There is Easter, which is the most important day of Christian calendar, believed to be the day Jesus rose from the dead. Then we have Good Friday and we have Pentecost. If we look into the similarities and differences which I have been pointing out throughout the lecture, we look into some of the common similarities, with his faith in the Supreme, fasting, life after death, good deeds, organized social system. And now there is a very quick summary of the different ideas which has been propagated by the three religion. We see the whole idea of Hinduism in terms of explanation of evils is in terms of pleasure, wealth, worldly success and illusion, the pursuit of which results in evil. So what is actually evil has been defined in all the three religion. Then salvation or freedom from the circle of life and death is again in terms of moksha and salvation, being very common in all the three religion. And afterlife, in Hinduism it is nirvana, in Islam it is the sensual description of afterlife, Christianity is the judgment, heaven and hell. So if you good deed in this life, you will go to heaven, if you do bad deed, you go to hell. In Hinduism it is said is that if you do good deed in this life, you will be born to a higher varna order. So that is the central objective of the understanding of understanding religion in a comparative method, whereby we try to lay down the basic features and tenets of all religion, and what emerges through a comparison or through the understanding of similarities and differences is that religion is ultimately a way of organizing a life. It is a way of trying to establish a society which is egalitarian and based on ideas of peace, sharing and brotherhood. Thank you.
With this note, thank you, ma'am. Thank you so much for giving us this session on comparative religion. Dear friends, we believe that you should write to us at info.cec@nic.in if you have any question or if you wish to give your feedback for this particular lecture. We are going to meet again soon, but before that, we would like to tell you all that this lecture is going to be uploaded on YouTube soon. So keep watching us, keep writing us. We are going to meet and would be discussing more. Till then, take care. Goodbye. Thank you, ma'am. Thank you once again.